because we have a quorum of members of the Department of Public Works Facility Study Committee present, we'll probably be discussing that project, and I've posted the meeting, so I'd also like to call the DPW FSC meeting to order as well. And we'll adjourn that when we're done with the discussion of the public safety building. First order of business is resident concerns. We have anyone who would like to speak?
Thank you. Bill Klauer, Piper Road. Just wondering if the town has a operations plan for when we lose power. Route 2, Taylor Road, Piper Road. Because last Wednesday when we lost the power, there was nothing going on down there, and it was a death trap. Thank you.
Thank you.
Charlie Cadillac, Paul Revere Road. At last meeting, you had the report from the DEI Commission, whatever it was called. There was not much discussion, and it was just accepted. I would like to review the whole DEI situation for the record. First of all, and I've said this before, and I will continue to say it, the whole concept of diversity, equity, and immersion is absolutely opposite to the goal of eliminating discrimination. If you identify people by their skin color, by their race, by their religion, by their gender, whatever, you're perpetuating the very things that you want to eliminate. I will keep saying it until somebody else figures it out. Second, the report, which I have now had a chance to read, is pretty well useless. It repeats a lot of the stuff that was in the original DEI Commission report, which Mr. Martin mostly wrote, which was supposed to determine whether Acton needs some kind of correction to its racial and other discrimination. Never offered any opinion on that, just went ahead and recommended this position. The position is predictable. It was a year ago in town meeting already discussed this. We're voting money for a position that didn't exist yet, but everybody knows it was going to be. Not enough time to go through the 43 pages of that report, but a lot of it is so totally useless, like lists of all the boards and committees that the town has. We know what they are. We don't need to pay somebody to give us a list, and so on. Well, the one thing I found pretty typical, a lot of the recommendations were described as, some people said this, quoting somebody, didn't name him. The matter of the title came up, and some people objected to the word officer. Why? Well, that sounds like police, and of course, police, we can't have that. So change it. No discussion, no opposite viewpoint, nothing. Just somebody said, we don't like it, so we change it. That's about the whole report is like that. Anyway, I also find it rather interesting that this report was written by a women's group. Where's the diversity? Men are allowed? Nobody thought of that. You hired a group that was only women. You won't be allowed to do that, you know, after this officer is in place, whatever, not officer, sorry, director. Director also tells me that this is not the end of it. We're probably looking at adding substantially to that department, which may change a year from now when there's no money. It'll be high on my list of positions to get rid of. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Corinne Hogseth, pardon me, Indian Village. I agree with everything that Charlie said, but I want to also talk about the cost of this position. When it was proposed at town meeting last year, I believe the article was for $85,000, which was $35,000 for a study, which we knew what the outcome of the study would be, and $50,000 for a half a year of compensation. Is that correct? So in this report, it says that this position, they're recommending that it come in at a pay grade of 17, which ranges from like $140 to over $206,000, with the average being around 160. And then by the time you add benefits and the pension contribution, all this stuff, I'm sure it's probably a 25% fringe rate, probably more. That is not what town meeting voted for. A half a year, 50, 100, that's 100,000. That's all in. That's pension contribution, benefits, everything. You're probably bringing on something that's going to cost at least 2, probably 3 times that. Again, town meeting didn't vote for that. I also want to just, again, with Charlie's concerns, Abraham X. Kendi in one of his books, and I don't read his books. I see the quotes and I remember what suits my argument, like most of us do. But in his book, he says the solution to past discrimination is present discrimination, and the solution to current discrimination is future discrimination. This is the road that DEI and critical race theory and all this stuff goes down. Our schools have already gone too far down that path. We're seeing it degrade the quality of education and the atmosphere in the schools. The town's going down that road too. You should stop before we do any more harm to our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Scott Smyers from Central Street. I'm here about a different topic. About 17 days ago, on July 8th, there was an incident at the Acton Discovery Museum in which an Acton resident was arrested and has been charged with 3 felonies. It was a politically charged incident. It was a detailed police report, and I'm concerned of the select board being consistent. Over the past year and a half, there's been incidents that were not violent and had to do with prank phone calls and verbal threats or misinterpretations that the select board has called 2 emergency meetings and issued statements to deal with critical topics that could lead to violence. Here we have an incident that was violent. There was an arrest. It was politically charged. There were people from out of town there, but the only person who got arrested was from Acton. That same person has, over the years, made terrible accusations on social media, has come to town meetings, select board meetings, school committee meetings, and singled out particular people and criticized them and even dehumanized them on social media. So I ask that the select board consider this event, if you've even heard of it, hopefully some of you have, and treat it with the same sort of emergency response that you have previously for incidents that weren't violent at all. And I would also like the chair of the select board here, Mr. Charter, to possibly review with the town manager and or the police on their redaction policy, because I requested a police report from the Acton Police Department. I eventually got a report at that time, or a few days ago, and it's different than the report that I have now a copy of that was actually at the courthouse. And the parts that are missing from the one from the local police department report doesn't seem to make sense why that would be removed. So please look into this on both fronts I've asked you about. Thank you.
Thank you. Matt, can you let the first online speaker in, please?
Yes, Mr. Chair. The first speaker is Ruth Thatcher. Ruth, you should be able to speak.
Thank you, Matt. Yes, I just have a question. I don't know who to go to. I'm trying to get an update on the progresses for Gardner Field, when that project should be finished and when the playground will be open. I don't know what department to contact.
Okay, thank you. I'll ask the town manager to update us in his remarks on that. Thank you, Ruth.
Thank you.
I apologize. I'm not sure how to pronounce this next speaker's name. Nijan Datan. Nijan, you should be able to.
Yeah, hi. So just based on what Corinne just said, I'd asked a question at the last select board meeting, the one before that, about this position that the town meeting had put on, and effectively $100,000 salary that this person is going to get. And the town manager gave me an answer that was, it was confusing. I wasn't quite sure what he said, and of course I was not allowed to raise my hand again. And my confusion is this. We put something in front of the voters, and the voters voted a salary of $50,000 for 6 months, which means that it seemed to me that if you're going to draft an article like that, that means the voters have a say in the salary range of the new hire. So now if we go and hire somebody with a higher salary range, and to say that this has been budgeted for, well, it may have been budgeted for in the sense you may have some money, but what does the vote mean at town meeting? I mean, if we authorize X and you go X plus something else, where does that authorization come from? So I'm actually confused about what the voters' powers are and what the town manager's powers are on this exact same issue that the voters voted on. That's very confusing to me. I'd like somebody to clarify that, because we're not talking about small dollars and we're talking about a new position, and this bureaucracy will keep increasing every year. They'll find new reasons. It will never die. So it's a sizable amount of my tax dollars, and I don't know where the authorization comes from. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that concludes those five.
Okay, is that everyone we have online?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Manager, your update?
Thank you. First, I wanted to mention that due to the power outage and some related things that happened throughout town, ActonTV, one of their pieces of equipment was impacted. So people that usually watch this broadcast on YouTube, that's not available right now. So hopefully they found another way to watch us. And if your friends usually watch on YouTube, if you could let them know to find us on channel, whatever channel we're on cable, or also on the live stream on ActonTV. Those both work right now currently. Just a few other updates. One of the projects approved with the American Rescue Plan Act here locally was to move forward on an online e-permitting system to make it easier for businesses to do work here in the town. And we are just finishing the procurement process for that, and we're going to start the implementation of a new e-permitting system this summer. So we're very excited to get started on that project. And it could be ready to go by the end of the calendar year, which is our target. So if nothing else, we'll have parts of it ready to go by the end of the calendar year. So that's very exciting. There were several things that I wanted to mention about legislative matters. At town meeting that was held earlier this year, there were a few citizen petitions and a few home rule petitions sponsored by the board, and those are progressing through the process. One example, one of them is the checkout bags, minimum charge for checkout bags. There was a public hearing held on July 20th. There was also a public hearing on July 20th for the alternate methods for public hearing notices, which we filed. We also had a home rule petition for 15-mile residency requirements being lifted, and that's going to be filed this coming week. So our state legislators are busy working for us to implement many of the local actions that we've requested of them through town meeting action. Along the same lines, there's some potential funding in the state budget to help us out with Narrow Park and also to help out Boston area gleaners, which we hope will be finalized and approved. There's also some exciting news coming out of the federal budget discussions as it relates to our historic home here in the back of the town hall parking lot. There potentially could be some funding in the federal budget to help us with that this coming year. So very exciting. There's also a very interesting climate action legislation that I believe one of our select board members is going to tell us more about in a little bit. Other items of note, we had a big power outage last week. You all know that. 6,000 to 7,000 people lost power in the community last week. Eversource brought a full crew of people up to try to address it. You've seen around town 7 different locations where we have huge green trailers with huge green generators, and those are brought in place to serve to keep the power going if the issues that they had that day happened again. Fortunately, they were able to complete the repairs that were necessary, and those generators that have been there since last week as a precaution will be removed tomorrow after the storm rolls through tonight, assuming they're not needed. Let's hope they're not. I also wanted to mention that we had a lot of people calling and ask us to open cooling stations, which is something that we were always willing to do. Our public library next door was open most of the days of the heat wave, and since it wasn't open yesterday, we actually encouraged people to go to the public safety facility if they needed a place with air conditioning. We offered free transportation for that as well. Nobody used the service, but we're happy to provide it. I also wanted to mention the Dei Director Posting. As directed at the last meeting, I issued a newsflash that went out to the community to publish the actual report, and we are going to get started on the recruitment for that position, very exciting position, in August. Just to correct some of the misstatements earlier tonight about the budget, there have been two town meeting actions that are related to this position. The first was 2 summers ago where the funding was approved for a study and then the first year's salary. And then in the most recent budget, funding was approved for the salary. So we have the money remaining from the initial town meeting plus the funding in the current budget, which will cover the cost of this new position, and it would not be in the area that was mentioned earlier. I believe this I-17 range is the high 70s to the mid 115 range or so. So it's not as high as was mentioned earlier, and it's fully funded and approved by town meeting twice. And I guess one other point on the study, the purpose of that study was not to decide whether we needed a diversity director. It was to help us establish a job description and an organizational structure. And I believe they fulfilled that mission very well. Thank you.
Thank you. Other members? David.
Thank you. I'd just like to correct a few more things about the DEIC which were stated as fact that are not fact. So it was stated that I basically wrote the DEIC's report. In fact, I drafted a quarter of the report. The other three quarters were drafted by others, and it was edited in public session in DEIC meetings. It was stated that there were no men on the study group. That's not correct. There was a man on the study group. And it also, if you read the report, it says that the main reason is not, I mean, the fact is that an officer, it can't have connotations like a police officer, but in fact, the similar positions in town, like our sustainability director or our economic development director, are directors. And this position is similar to that, and so it was recommended that we call it a director. Thank you.
Jim.
Let's see. As John mentioned, the House and Senate have sent a major climate bill to the governor, H5060, that includes, among many features, a possible way for Acton to proceed to be able to regulate and possibly prevent, and largely prevent, fossil fuel infrastructure in new construction and major rehab. The bill creates a pilot program to allow up to 10 cities and towns to try out a fossil fuel ban. Before they can apply, towns and cities would have to create a corresponding home rule petition, which we already did at the 2021 town meeting when we passed the clean energy bylaw and the corresponding home rule petition. However, before the application can be accepted, however, towns have to fulfill one of 3 housing-related requirements. They have to achieve their 10% affordable housing numbers, achieve a safe harbor status under the 40B program, or implement zoning changes that are called for in the recent housing choice law that we've started researching. We had a presentation to us as a board earlier this year. As near as I can tell so far, and this is all very new, the quickest way forward for Acton would likely be the 10% affordable housing count, since we are quite close, and since there are projects under consideration that could get us the rest of the way there. But please stay tuned as we get more information about this program. When we do, I'll recommend that we put it on our agenda so we can learn more and discuss our options. Another way forward in decarbonizing our new buildings is via what's called the Specialized Opt-in Stretch Energy Code, and I don't make these names up. It was invented in last year's climate legislation. The program is still being finalized, but it may make it rather difficult to build fossil fuel infrastructure into new buildings and major rehab. Any green community like Acton will be able to opt into this building code. It would require a town meeting vote to adopt this new code. I'll be writing personal testimony to the DOER, which is responsible for this code, to communicate the importance of stopping as much new fossil fuel infrastructure as possible. And if the timing's appropriate, I may bring a copy of that letter or a version of it to a future board meeting to ask for your consideration as a board letter. And after the program gets finalized, I'll recommend that we ask John to have his staff look over the program details and evaluate the impact on Acton of adopting this optional energy code so that we can have a meaningful discussion about bringing that forward to a future town meeting. On a related topic, many details are coming together on working with existing building owners on decarbonizing. I hope a future board meeting will be able to be presented with more information. And finally, an update on the low-income community solar system program that town meeting approved last year. As you might recall, this program was going to give large credits on the electricity bills of any low-income electricity customers who were part of the Acton Power Choice program at any level. The solar developers who are planning to build on the WR Grace site and the town have had cordial and useful discussions on bringing this forward, but we are currently stuck by inaction on the part of DPU to approve the final regulations that would make this possible. As with the stretch code, I'll be writing a short note to the DPU about this, and we'll bring it to a future board meeting for your consideration as a board statement. That's it.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Really cool updates, Jim. Just wanted to know that, Again, the reason why we talk about DEI is because we do currently see discrimination, and this discrimination is not colorblind, and that's why we can't take a colorblind approach to these types of solutions. And so I will keep saying that as long as I keep hearing rhetoric on the contrary. This is steps forward in the right direction. We need to be bold in our action, and that's the only way we can truly achieve equality. So I just want to thank everyone again, and that's it for me.
Thank you. So I've got a couple of items. For those who really like to watch YouTube, I recently filmed a segment specifically about the history of West Acton that appears in the Acton in Focus on YouTube, and dealt quite a bit with some of the history of the West Acton Citizens Library, so it might be worth a watch. Mr. Van Girardi, possible for our next meeting if we could get an update about the status of Gardner Field. And also, if you and I could speak at some point regarding some of the issues raised about the incident at the Discovery Museum and the redaction of those police reports, and kind of get an update on that. And finally, we're having a lot of discussion about green energy and electrification, but I think the incidents that occurred over the last few days during the summer with the failure of our electric grid here in town, sort of a cautionary tale for this rapid electrification. It was certainly very inconvenient that lots of people didn't have any air conditioning, but it's going to be a whole lot worse if lots of people don't have functioning air source heat pumps. So I think as we move ahead towards the electrification, I think we have to make sure that our partners at Eversource and all the utility companies actually have the infrastructure that can support that, and that there'll be a reliable supply of electricity and delivery of electricity before we start telling people they have to pull their oil burners and gas furnaces out of their houses. That said, we'll go to our next piece of business, which is a special use permit. The Acton Select Board will hold a public hearing on July 25th, 2022 at 7:10 p.m. in the Francis Faulkner Hearing Room 204 at the Town Hall, 472 Main Street, Acton, and virtually at actonmass.gov meeting-boss, BOS, on the application of Northeast Veterinary Real Estate LLC for a special use permit under zoning bylaw section 3.5.10 at 97 Great Road, map G4, parcel 50. The proposed use is veterinary care. Application materials and how to participate remotely are available online and at the Acton Town Hall. So, if the applicant could come forward.
My name is Leo Bertolami from Acton. 97 Great Road is part of Weatherby Plaza, which is located on Route 2A, basically at the Concord Road intersection. It is 5 acres, 10 buildings, 35,000 square feet of mixed use. And we're proposing to bring the veterinary hospital to number 97, which is the furthest building, eastbound on the property. I have done some research. It's now at 272 Great Road, which would be in the vicinity of Donnellan's, to move to 97 Great Road, maybe a mile, mile and a half down on the left, taking about 3,000 square feet. And the history of the Great Road vet was Dr. Smith way back in the 80s, then transferred to Dr. Kelman in the 90s, and Dr. McGrath now, who I represent, in the 2000s. They are open 5 days a week. We're petitioning under the zoning bylaw 3-5-10, veterinary care not to exceed 3 hospital units and stay over if it deemed necessary for the surgery. I think I can pretty much say that there is no stayover. Everything goes that day. This is a light surgery. Anything large today goes to Waltham or Lowell or so on with the animals. So as I said, the days are 5 days a week. There's a part-time Dr. Kelman, full-time Dr. McGrath. We will use 1.5 operating rooms, which the half is just part-time, but 10-5, 3-5-10 relates to 3, so I guess we'll ask for 3. Are there any questions?
I'll open it to the board and to the public. This actually was my project to examine. I've reviewed it with the town zoning enforcement officer. We do have a draft decision that was in our packet. I note that there does not seem to be any issues, and the only physical changes, I believe, is to the signage. Do we have any questions from any other members of the board? David.
When you say there's no changes except for signage, that's no exterior changes except signage.
That's correct, yeah.
Thank you.
Any questions from the audience? Okay. Mr. Klauer.
I believe this facility now has a doggy daycare downstairs. Will this continue? I didn't see anything mentioned about it.
That's the 272.
A good point. The doggy daycare is not going with the doctor in the veterinary hospital. It's staying right there.
Thank you.
At least, as far as I'm concerned, or we're concerned, we're not bringing it down.
All right, thank you. Unless there's any other comments, I would accept a motion.
So moved.
Okay. So, David.
Is there specific wording? Otherwise, I think we need a little bit more.
Yeah.
So I move to approve the site special permit at 97 Great Road for an animal hospital.
Okay, thank you. And I will add to that mandatory findings that this decision is consistent with master plan. It is in harmony with the purpose and intent of this bylaw, will not be detrimental or injurious to the neighborhood in which it is to take place, is appropriate for the site in question, and complies with all applicable requirements of this bylaw. David?
So, sorry, I neglected to say, actually, with the conditions that are in the packet.
Okay, we have a motion. Can we get a second?
Go ahead.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor of...
Dr. Smith was a great veterinarian. That's all I have to say.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Abstentions? None? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, the second public hearing, notice is hereby given under Chapter 140, Section 183A of the General Laws, that the Select Board will hold a public hearing on July 25th, 2022, at 7:20 p.m. in the Francis Faulkner Hearing Room 204, Acton Town Hall, and remotely by video conference and call in on the application of Frolic and Detour, 3 Nabog Park, for an entertainment license. On a computer, please click on the link to join the public meeting, actonma.gov/meeting/BOS, or from a telephone dial 646-876-9923 and a webinar ID 503-918-785. Telephone users may dial *9 to request to speak after joining the meeting. Computer and app users may use the raise hand feature to request to speak. Is the applicant available either in the room or online?
Lisa, I know, did you mention to Matt who would be joining us? Would you, Mr. Chair, would you like me to go over generally what this is? Or do you want to try to continue to sort this out?
Okay.
Yeah.
Please do.
So this is a restaurant in town off Great Road. It used to be the Red Raven. About 6 months ago, they reopened as Frolic and Detour, and they're interested in having live entertainment and being licensed and being to be allowed to do that. The license that's in the packet and with details and comments from staff is for live entertainment to occur between 7 p.m. and 10 p.m. I believe on weekends only, but we can double check that. The hours are definitely 7 to 10, and all the staff that commented, I believe, did not have any specific concerns that with it being indoor music. That's the summary that I have for you. Are there any questions?
So I'm a little disconcerted that the applicant is not present. The permit application does say Thursday through Saturday, 7 to 10, inside, not outside entertainment. I understand that there was a situation there 2 weekends ago with that was not apparently not licensed and not in compliant with this. Would you care to elaborate on this, Mr. Manager?
Yes, the same establishment had some type of live music at their place 2 weekends ago, and we received some complaints from neighbors that live nearby, which caused us to investigate. And when we did so, it was determined that they actually did not even have a license, and they didn't know that either because they're a new business, relatively new to the industry. And so they worked with Lisa this week and Julie Piersonos, our Director of Economic Development, to put this application forward, and we did a public hearing as required through the Lowell Sun. And that was an outdoor music. I think that was the biggest issue, is it was outdoors. And I think what they're proposing is indoors.
Thank you. Comments from the board? David.
Thank you. I think there's plenty of room indoors in this venue for the entertainment, but I just want to make sure that what we're voting on restricts it to being indoors, because with the condos nearby, I can see how that would be a problem if it was outdoors. So does the actual license restrict it to indoors?
The license application is specific for indoors.
Okay. Thank you.
Comments from other members of the board? Comments from the public in the room? Matt, I believe we have one person online that would like to speak.
We do, Mr. Chair. It'll be Linda. Linda, you should be able to speak.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, I was living in the woods. I was well aware that the incident that happened from 12 noon to 11 o'clock at night. If they do it indoors, do they agree to have the sliders? Because if they're indoors and leave the venue open to the outdoors, the music is going to carry and impact the residents that live down in that neighborhood woods. So I ask that it be clarified that the doors, the sliders, be closed and not just within the building, because that makes a difference in terms of how noise is transmitted.
Okay, thank you. Do we have anyone else, Matt?
We do not, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I would entertain a motion. David.
I move to approve the entertainment license for Frolic and Detour with the understanding that the entertainment will be inside and with the doors closed.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor of the entertainment license with the restriction that all entertainment take place indoors with the doors closed? Please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, approved. Thank you. The next piece of business we have is an update on Public Works facilities study. We have engineers here from Weston and Sampson who did the study. They have been engaging with the Public Works Facilities Study Committee. The study committee has had monthly meetings for about 6 months now. We've come up to a point where we really think the board needs to be updated a bit. And we're mindful of the fact that to move this project ahead much further, it's going to require eventually some input from the budget. And I will point out that this is one of the voted goals of the board for this year, is to advance this project. Certainly, in addition to the questions that could be entertained from the select board, I will certainly at the proper time invite any members of the Public Works Facility Study Committee to make comments as well. Mr. Commemorate. We have an IT whiz right down at the end of the table.
Thanks, Dean. My name is John Como, Weston and Sampson Engineers. We were hired by the town to perform a feasibility study for the DPW located at 14 Forest Road. And the DPW Building Committee asked us to come tonight to give the board and the town an update on the project. Sorry about this. I'll hopefully get this going in a second. It's not everything. It's not, for whatever reason, it's not pulling down.
The pull down menu came down a second ago.
Did it?
It did.
Okay.
I don't know why it's not going down now.
Maybe I will turn it off and turn it back on. I'll try again.
Oh, don't do that. Actually, right down here, right? Does that work too? Right down here, right?
Okay. All right. Thanks for your patience. Appreciate that. The agenda, introductions. My name's John Como. I introduced myself already. This is Mike Richard. Mike's our facilities leader of the facilities group. I'm going to go briefly through this, about a 15-minute presentation, then we'll open it up to questions. Public Works facility in Acton, what do they do? We always say that they're the first responders who respond before everyone else can get out and assist the public. So before the fire department, before the police department, before emergency crews can get on the roads, the DPW is there to clear the roads and make everything safe so other responders can then do their jobs. They're on call 24 hours a day. They deal with snow emergencies. They clear down trees. They take care of oil spills, accidents, and they're there whenever you need them. The town's DPW is composed of 6 different divisions. There's the Highway Division, Engineering, Trees and Grounds, the Administration, Public Facilities, and then the Transfer Station. They maintain 105 miles of road. They open up their storage garage for mass vaccinations that we've had recently. Maintain all of the town equipment and vehicles, amongst many of their different responsibilities. Why does the town need a new DPW? They've had this one for 52 years. Part of the reason is the facility is over 50 years old and was undersized, in need currently of significant upgrades and repairs. The town's DPW's responsibilities have increased. The population when the facility opened in 1970 was 10,000 residents less than it is today. The facility itself does not meet current building codes, energy codes, accessibility codes. And this undersized and at this point now kind of substandard facility negatively impacts the efficiency of operations and employee safety. Interesting article that was in the 1969 Assabet newspaper, regional newspaper. There was a meeting similar to the one we're having tonight where they decided on the size of the building that they would build. Originally, the design was 36,000 square feet. They decided to cut 12,000 square feet off the size of the building and ended up with the building that you have today on Forest Road. Came in at $265,000 construction cost, $10.62 a square foot. That's kind of incredible. But the town not only increased from 14,000 to 24,000 today, during that decade of the 60s, the town doubled in size. So it's possible that due to the cuts that were made and just the phenomenal growth that Acton experienced. That facility was outdated sooner than it should have been in terms of size. The current condition, it's failing. The CMU walls are not reinforced vertically. They've been buckling. They've been hit from the inside. The vehicles are larger than they were when the facility opened. They're very tight for space inside, so they've had some issues with clearances. Lots of equipment needs to go outside. This is equipment that their useful life is reduced because it's stored outside and exposed to the elements. Dangerous interior storage mezzanine that was site built, I think, by the DPW staff itself. It was needed, but it's doesn't meet OSHA. The railings are dangerous, the stairs are dangerous, the headroom clearances are dangerous. A lot of storage has to happen outside, so we have shipping containers that have been converted to storage units with a fabric structure overhead to serve that need. Here's a photo of the storage garage. It's packed with vehicles. To get all the vehicles inside, which is really needed. It's $1 million investment by the town in these vehicles, a new six-wheel dump trucks, $300,000 or more. It reduces the life of the vehicle to keep them outside. So they bring them in, but it takes a lot of time to fit these vehicles and equipment in the garage that they have now. It's very inefficient. Here's a photo of a recent project. It's a center drive aisle storage garage with diagonal parking and no center stacked parking because there's enough room for the vehicles and equipment. Employee support staff space is lacking. Training space is non-existent. There aren't facilities for women in the building, separate facilities for women in the building. Vehicle maintenance area is very cramped. Dangerous, poor ventilation, poor indoor air quality. A newer facility would have plenty of height for lifting large vehicles, plenty of clearances for workshop equipment and tools, and modern ventilation system that would act automatically in the presence of noxious gases. New fuel island, wash bay. Fluid storage areas that are safe and contained. We met with the DPW staff, we met with the superintendents and the administration and went through a programming exercise. We developed the size of the different spaces and their requirements, came up with a program, met again with the staff and with the DPW administration and found areas to reduce the size of the facility. We ended up with about a 10% reduction in the overall size. And there could be other efficiencies gained as the design progresses, but we put in contingencies for circulation space and for the building itself, elements that can be reduced as the design becomes more fine-tuned. Conceptual plans, this is the existing site. The southern half of the site is taken up by the capped landfill and the transfer station, and the northern part of the site off Forest Road is the DPW with access from Forest Road. So we looked at a number of different schemes on the site based on the overall sizes that we determined in the programming exercise. We also looked at reusing the existing building, which is about 25,000 square feet. We had structural engineers evaluate the building itself. There are many limitations, undersized structure, unreinforced CMU, that would not necessarily mean a savings by salvaging the building itself. It's also, its location would be difficult to work around in terms of new construction. So we came up with a preferred alternate, and the preferred alternate is the site plan that we're looking at now. It keeps the existing salt and sand storage which is relatively new, and that's a pretty significant savings for the town. Relocates the fuel island, which is used by all the different departments in town, to closer to Forest Road so that vehicles aren't having to go into the center of the DPW yard. Having that circulation separated out would be a huge benefit and a safety consideration. The large storage garage would allow for all the vehicles owned by the department and a large number of the pieces of equipment, motorized equipment, to be stored inside where their life would be extended. Environmental considerations would be starting up diesel trucks outside in the cold when they're out doing a snow emergency and they need to come back to the yard to rest. They're not bringing the vehicles in. The plows on the front of the vehicles don't allow them to come into the garage and store them. So they idle in the yard, which is not ideal. Indoor storage, minimally heated to 60 degrees, would allow for cleaner, efficient operations, startup of diesel vehicles, and maintenance of hydraulics for plows and other pieces of equipment on the vehicles. Dean mentioned that we met with the Acton Green Advisory Board last week. We had a very good conversation with them and listened to their concerns and their desire and the town's mandate to get rid of fossil fuels and fossil fuel infrastructure. So we brought with us one of our HVAC engineers who's familiar with geothermal, heating and cooling. We talked about a number of ideas, a number of ways that this facility can be sustainable and contribute to the town's forward-thinking goals. This is a kind of theoretical site of a DPW. We've been thinking about DPWs and how they can be more sustainable and contribute to the health of the community. If this were a new site, there's a lot of things that we could do, but there's a lot of things that we could do on the existing site at 14 Forest Road. Site interventions like bioswales, vegetated shading, we have a little bit of that already. Electrical vehicle charging stations now, with the municipal opt-in, that could be 10%, that could be 20% of parking spaces would be required to be have electric charging. You're right next to the solar field at the town's landfill. Is there a way to tap into that energy along with green roof energy from the facility itself? A lot of this is, I think you might say, LEED light, but very applicable to a building and a facility that would serve the town for, we always say 50, but we talked last week with the advisory board, Green Advisory Board, about 75 years because of the embodiment of carbon in construction materials, and why design something to be obsolete in 50 if we can get it to be viable for 75 years. The building itself, we do this as a matter of meeting energy code, but for best practices, super insulated building envelope, cool roof is a low albedo roof, a white roof, reflective, limits heat gain, super insulated roof, solar roof, take advantage of the orientation at 14 Forest, which is the way we have it now. It's about a southwest orientation, which is pretty advantageous. Clear story windows, bring in natural light, limit electric lighting, along with occupancy sensors. Shading devices, again, just limit heat gain. Solar glazing, limit heat gain. Rainwater harvesting, we could collect water on the site for irrigation. Inside the building, geothermal heating and cooling, energy efficient equipment and systems. Radiant floor heating throughout. These are all definitely things that are within the realm of practicality and possibility. Wastewater management. So currently the facility lacks a wash bay. So trucks get sprayed off in the yard. Coles Brook, I think, has some impacts with conductivity that could be related to the historical use of the DPW site. Anything that we do on the site now would be a significant improvement in managing wastewater and managing runoff and managing salt that gets somehow into the waterways. Destratification fans, that's keeping the heated air pushed down. It's just another efficiency measure. Water efficient plumbing fixtures. Durable materials, again, we're looking at a 75-year potential building. Low VOC materials so that you have a healthy indoor air quality. Operable windows for individual comfort. We talked a little bit about the future of the DPW fleet being electrified. This is coming. It's not today, but probably 5 to 10 years. We're going to see larger and larger vehicles with electric batteries. And what does that mean for the DPW in the future? Well, what it means now is you need to design this facility to be adaptable to that. You need to get the infrastructure for electrical infrastructure for charging. You need to have rooms that can be converted from maybe maintenance of gasoline and diesel powered vehicles to maintenance of electric battery powered vehicles, battery storage areas, so forth. You need to train your mechanics now to work on electric vehicles. Fire protection would become big if you're storing a lot of large vehicles indoors with powerful batteries that can ignite. So how is that handled? The benefits of an improved code compliant facility for the town, safe environment for the workers, protect the town's investment in equipment, more efficient workspace resulting in more efficient response times to better serve the public. An example of the DPW crew doesn't need to spend an hour to fit their vehicles in every day at the end of the day, or to move certain vehicles to get other pieces of equipment out. There would be more time spent doing important jobs for the town rather than inefficiencies. The facility now is going to need improvements. It's going to need a new roof. It's going to need wall repairs, structural repairs. It's uninsulated masonry right now. And it's, I think, the fourth biggest energy user in the town, at least according to our meeting last week with the Green Advisory Board. So we want to reduce the carbon footprint, greenhouse gas emissions on the site. Anticipated costs. It's not 211 or 11, I forget what it was, 1065 a square foot. Unfortunately not. So this is a chart that kind of shows what's happened over the last 3-4 years. Some of it is the pandemic, but it seems like those fluctuations or that volatility has kind of evened out. The Acton DPW is projected right now, and this is a high level estimate at $585 a square foot, which puts it towards the lower end. This is the green line is a 5% escalation line from 2021, and the upper blue line is more like a 13% escalation line. We're just getting more information in from recent bids. We did have a 576 bid that came in the last month, and that's 576 a square foot. Anyway, that's the Acton DPW construction cost at its current square foot, be in the range construction cost only of $27.9 million. And then the total project cost range, 32 to 34, depending on where the soft costs come in. Next steps, I think the next step is to advance the design to a point where you can get much better and accurate independent costing information. At that point, that you could then decide how you want to proceed with the project. If you wanted to do it as a single one project, or if you wanted to then phase it based on available funds and the appetite of the town to move forward with that. Once the independent cost estimate and the 60% design is done, you'll know enough to go to town meeting and put it before a vote. The 60% would include a lot of investigatory steps, such as looking at geotechnical data for 14 Forest Road, doing an environmental site survey, determine if there are any kind of impacts from petroleum or other chemicals or contaminants, looking at the existing building, the hazardous materials there. When you demo that, you'll need to consider how you're going to handle either asbestos, PCB, or lead paint, which is most likely in the building. And that concludes the brief presentation. I guess open it up to any questions.
Thank you. Questions from the board? Jim.
I'm wondering, Dean or John, who's studying whether we need all the vehicles that we have? I mean, since this is driven by the large number of vehicles we have, if we needed less, the whole thing would cost less. So I was wondering is that in the scope of this study, or is that something that is being done internally, or where's that info coming from?
John?
We're generally always monitoring the equipment that we have and the equipment that we need and managing that through our 10-year plan. And the thing that we do as a relatively small department, but we have to do winter and then we have to do non-winter operations, you wouldn't want to have sort of a small number of vehicles that you can do heavy-duty snow plowing with and use them all year for everything else you do, because that's an efficient use of equipment. So we tend to have a lot more equipment than people, but we're always looking for ways to reduce what we have out there that we have to maintain.
Next question was, if anyone knows, at some point, because you asked about the solar on the landfill, at some point, the ownership of that has a potential of reverting to the town. And then there would be options for, how do we use it flexibly? Right now, it's locked into a power purchase agreement. Do we know when the windows for, purchasing the equipment and making it ours, when those windows are?
I can take a stab at that. There's actually two pieces to solar down there. There's what's on the roof, which is quite a bit older, and then there's the larger facility on the top of the cap landfill. I believe what's on the roof is about 15 years old at this point. What's on the landfill, probably in the 10-year time frame. I believe that they figure it's amortized after 20 years. My recollection, this is going back to pre-me, I believe that there are options in various points along the way to purchase the existing landfill solar operation. And I believe that there's a schedule of values that was associated with the original contract, but it's kind of vague, all of that, and it's things I was involved in 10 years ago.
Jim. One last question for now. I wrote it down. So the costs of, I assume we have to have a whole alternate site for a while for DPW operations, because during construction you can't, obviously operations can't continue there, and operations have to continue somewhere. So does any of this price include the cost of, gaining access to an alternate site and setting up a temporary facility? And if not, do we have any ballpark idea of how much that's going to be?
I believe that was outside the scope of what we asked Weston Sampson to do. But, John, if you've got any thoughts on that.
Yeah, that cost is tied into the estimate, but it's a very kind of loose number. It could be, the town could find space for administrative staff in their offices already or someplace else. The biggest challenge, I think, is vehicle maintenance, is to find a place for vehicle maintenance. Vehicle storage is you can kind of live with that for a little while outdoors, but it's not ideal. Vehicle maintenance, we'd have to find a home for. So, and the guess is it's about 1.5 years before this facility is built. Especially if it's here. If there's an alternate site, then that goes away. But yeah, that's an additional cost for building on this site. It's not large enough to accommodate construction and operations.
Thanks.
Welcome.
David.
Thank you. You only talked very briefly about the transfer station. Are we considering this one project?
So this is really just about the Department of Public Works, and we're putting the transfer station off to the side for now. We did initially look at both of these operations at the same time, and the transfer station is part of the DPW, but that part of the project is not included.
Good. I think that's actually a good approach to deal with both separately. I'm just curious, you mentioned the vehicle storage would be heated to 60 degrees. Why so warm? Right. I'm not speaking facetiously. I mean, most, you can store vehicles in an unheated garage, even if it was heated to 40 or 50 degrees. That's going to seem very warm when you're plowing for a 20-degree snowstorm. That's kind of the typical temperature that we've kind of set to. It allows for some, heat loss and then kind of reheating of the space. So, and we insulate between the storage garages and then adjacent areas like vehicle maintenance or admin spaces. We could investigate going colder. Diesel, starts up very nicely, 60. But we can investigate, how low can that actually go. But a diesel truck will start at 40, no problem as well, right?
It will.
At 15, a diesel truck would have, or 20 maybe even, or certainly colder, right? It
does. It gets a little, in terms of just the exhaust and the amount of, it's almost like an oil, leak or something. You get a lot more kind of noxious kind of exhaust the colder you are.
So the reason why I ask is that, an enclosed garage will, throughout most of the year, maintain itself above freezing, even when the temperatures outside are below freezing. And so the amount of heat required to just raise it to 45 or something, I just throwing that out, is much less than to heat it, that huge area to 60. And so I think, we should be, and then, the heating infrastructure doesn't need to be as big, right? So,
correct.
Anyway, I think that, my personal garage at home is unheated and it only drops below 32 when the temperature outside is in single digits, right? So I think it's, because you get heated by the ground, especially a concrete floor, it's going to heat the building anyway. I have a question for the manager. Is it the intent to have all DPW functions in this building, or is the thought to when it's done, obviously, or is there another plan?
So I think it's being designed to cover all the operations that are there currently. I think any that we decide to add to it for convenience or operational efficiency, we haven't made those decisions or thought through yet. But something definitely worth looking at.
Thank you. And I just one more thing to keep in mind for electric vehicle charging facilities is I think we should make an assessment as to what vehicles we would charge overnight and which vehicles need to be charged and reused again right away. Maybe trucks that are used by the tree crew, for example, can be charged overnight. But And I completely agree that plow trucks we're quite a ways away from having those be electric. But there may be need for other vehicles to be able to be recharged in half an hour and used again. And so the charging infrastructure should reflect that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Fran?
David sort of asked my question, and then I was curious if all of the DPW employees were located at the building currently.
So all the employees that work in the highway division, the trees and grounds division, engineering, the transfer station employees kind of flow back and forth between the transfer station and this facility. Newer parts of DPW include cemetery, but they have a facility and infrastructure on the other side of town or nearby, but not on site. Facilities, I guess, would be the one division of Public Works that's not inside that building. They are, the director sits next door and the staff are on the move throughout the facilities.
Thanks.
Imogen?
Thank you for letting me catch up with my notes. Yes, so just a few quick questions. There was a chart, and I was wondering if you could go back to it in the PowerPoint slide. That was, it was a table, and it mentioned like the square feet. So I think the revised plan said that we were aiming for around 47,000, but I missed it, so I wanted to go back to that.
Better way to do it than this.
Yes, this one. Thank you. So I was wondering if you could, so right now, are we looking at revision 1 like that?
That's right.
Okay.
Yes.
And then what's the revision 2? What is that related to?
That is to be determined. So there will be more revisions during another phase of design.
Okay, so that's like the next
Right.
phase of the design.
So this is where we are now.
Okay.
And I guess additional efficiencies should be or could be realized through the design process. So.
Okay, great. So the goal is to ultimately potentially decrease that.
It would be, yes. I mean, I think I mentioned we put a lot of contingencies in for unknown circulation space. So we've developed spaces and then, like a muster room and a locker room and an office and a size associated with that, but we don't have corridors and, exact size of mechanical rooms and structure. So we put in a large contingency, and then that would typically go down as the design progresses. So we would probably see another reduction in the square footage, but that's still to be realized, I guess.
Great, that's helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And then the second question was, you did mention all the different sustainability measures that are being considered. So the list of what you had mentioned, so the solar, the garden shed, I think that was mentioned, electrical vehicle charging station. Are all of those being considered? Are you adding more to the list as you go forward? So just wanted to know where that is.
Sure. We just had our initial conversation with the Green Advisory Board last week. We're also aware of the new energy code that's coming online in 2023. I think August, the municipal opt-in, the town, I think Acton is a town that's at the forefront of kind of limiting fossil fuels or eliminating fossil fuels. So there are a lot of opportunities here in this facility to kind of investigate and to employ sustainable measures. And now those aren't the only ones, but that's kind of the list that we have for now. And they seem like these are not even cutting edge at this moment. These are things that are available and have been employed before. It's just municipalities don't always have the appetite for the additional cost of doing these things.
Great, thank you. This all sounds great, and looking forward to hearing more as the project continues. But this was a good update. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I would I know, David, you asked the question about where does the transfer station lie in this. A couple of things that the study committee has been dealing with. One early decision that we made was that there are so many moving parts with a transfer station. There's been discussion in the past about, will we have a transfer station? Will we go to on all roadside pickup? It just really complicated the entire process. So early on, the committee made the decision that we'd focus solely on the existing highway department building. So I think that's an interesting, a crucial part of it, and that's why we really didn't have a presentation for tonight about that. But obviously something's going to have to get done at some point down there. The other point that was raised, and we discussed it briefly during the goal setting, is that the very real situation with the fueling station is going on right now. Tanks are approaching the end of their warranty life. They don't have to be removed, but they're 25 years old. And that fueling station is right in the middle of the site. So if there might be a way, as this moves forward, to take that piece in advance and get it out of there, move it to another location, you'll have the benefits of having tanks that you have a lot more confidence in. And also it would clean up the site quite a bit. Then of course you've got the other related issue of the fueling stations, not only for all the town vehicles, but there's also about 100 school district vehicles that drink from those tanks. How much of that they're going to continue to do and whether they're going to electrify their fleet, well, that's a whole other question and something we'd have to discuss when we think about sizing the tanks. But to replace those tanks would certainly be a shared cost between the town and the schools, so long as they hope to continue. They participated in the initial tanks, and all of the fuel usage is all tracked, and those bills are sent to the proper entities. So that's another piece of the puzzle that makes this thing so interesting. I'd like to do at this point, since we do have some members of the study committee here, if there's anybody from the facility study committee that would like to make any remarks or questions, well, I'd certainly invite you to the podium. And then when we get done with that, we'll open it to other members of the public.
Good evening. Roland Board, and also member of the Finance Committee. And as Dean said earlier this evening, we're going to be really careful when we're looking at electrification, because it's exactly what happened this week. I was in the middle of working, the power went out. Lucky enough I had what I had to get done for the day, but power came back on, it was on for 2 hours, and it went down for another 4 hours. What happens if somebody who's on oxygen needs that electric to be on all the time? How are we going to deal with that? There is not enough electrical generation anywhere in the country to support a full grid and everything going electrical tomorrow morning, let alone in 20 years from now. So I really think that when we study these things too, that we have to be aware of that. Great planning for a facility that can handle that in the future. I fully agree with that. But we also should be looking at battery backup on these. In the days that the solar is fully going, we have tons of, like today, or not today, but yesterday we had sun for the last 2 days. Fantastic. Let's harness some of that and hold it. We're not good at a candidate for wind. We don't get enough wind in this area to do that. It's also inefficient. So I think we need to look at, when we are planning for our infrastructure within the town, especially with this facility since it is so old, that we need to be aware of that and figure that out.
Thank you. Any other members of the study committee like to make any remarks?
I'm Mayan Chang. I have questions about the capacity for the solar things. I thought that they had a life expectancy of 20 years. That's why the contract's for 20 years. And that every year that they were used, their efficiency dropped by a certain percentage. I would like to see that somehow not happen. I would like to see them last maybe 50 years and not drop so precipitously. And I don't know whether we are ready for that kind of thing or not. We definitely want to use as much solar as we possibly can, but I don't want the town to be stuck with costs and solar panels that are absolutely obsolete and not usable, because from what I've read, there's no place to recycle solar panels, and they go in people's landfills, and that's not a good solution. So I know, Jim, you're on the Green Board Advisory Committee. I think that that's something that you should help the committee with, perhaps, and bring the information back to us and to our contractor, please.
Thank you. Okay, do we have any comments from folks online? Matt?
Yes. Nijan?
Yeah, I have a question and a comment. I want this, I see a lot of references to geothermal heating these days in town in some presentations. Do we have any data as to how reliable it is? I mean, how often do these things break? Over a 3 or 5 year span, is it cost effective? How deep do you have to go to get the heat from, given that we live in New England? I mean, there's not much I know about geothermal, but I don't know how reliable it is, how cheap it is. Do we have enough mechanics to know how to fix a broken geothermal system? There just seems to be a lot of unknowns, and people have asked, I don't know who knows about this, and I don't know that it's that mature that we can force all this stuff on us. And secondly, this rush to solar, I mean, just to echo what Ann Chang said, and some, I think Dee might have mentioned, there's a lot to solar that we sort of romanticize, and the efficiency does go down, and the dirty little secret is when they break, we don't put in landfills many times, we just send it to third world countries, and they get the toxins going to the ground. We can look the other way. So there's a lot I can say about solar panels, but we have romanticized it to a point that it's not good. The net carbon footprint is not reduced by that much if you from soup to nuts, from production to destruction, and not for discussion here, but unless you have a backup of nuclear power, solar and wind is not the solution. So I don't know what this is all about. But my main question is about geothermal. Can somebody answer that?
John?
I'm not an expert on geothermal. I think the town probably will find out what's, for the fire station with the elementary school. It's a measure, it's a means to get off of fossil fuels as best as possible. The pumps can be electrically operated. In theory, it's going to save on greenhouse gas emissions. And I don't know that there's anything else available to cool and heat a large facility like this. Geothermal seems to be the best option, but I don't know if the long-term kind of reliability issues have been worked out.
Hey, David.
Yeah, so geothermal is a mature technology. It's in use in lots of different places. It's basically pumps and refrigerant. It's not literally not rocket science. In the case of the fire station, I believe that it pays for itself in about 12 years. And in the case of the elementary school, I believe it pays for itself in about 17 years. So it is more expensive to install, but it's much less expensive to operate. Air source heat pumps are a little bit cheaper to install and a little bit more expensive to operate.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I thought we were taking questions from the committee, and then it went to online and the general public. Anyway, Scott Myers, Central Street. I have a concern We hear about electric vehicles. I have an electric vehicle, a bicycle, and I think that's where the technology is about right now, and barely, you know. I think bicycles still could be improved upon. I think we have a long ways away to get to really full-size trucks that we need to operate a town. And one thing I haven't heard anything about is what are we going to do with the toxic waste associated with recycling batteries? Once we have all these wonderful electric vehicles, which I'm saying sarcastically, solve all our problems, and we have no more fossil fuel consumption. We have a lot of batteries, a lot of battery acid, a lot of toxic chemicals, a lot of rare earths. Is that going to be recycled in that new DPW facility? I'm all for the DPW facility. I understand it needs to be done. I understand I would like to see the minimum amount of pollution happening at this facility. That's good, but it has to be within reason. And I don't see that we can trust people that insist that we're in a climate emergency to make those reasonable decisions. So battery, toxic waste, what are we going to do with it? And number two, not that this has to do with the facility itself, but when you go to the transfer station, you go to the DPW facility, you look around that property, there is every single invasive plant in Massachusetts on that property. You know, there's more to the environment than sustainability. I think this isn't an engineering issue, but if we're looking at this property, we should be trying to do something about these invasive plants because they're just spreading around, they're drifting out into Route 2, drifting up and down the wind from the highway all over. You know, you got every single species there. Please take it into consideration. I've been told that the big pile of wood chips up front that goes to a biofuel facility is just unsorted material that probably contains a lot of invasive plants. And I see people almost every week filling up their free wood chips to bring to their yard, unknowingly spreading invasive plants likely around their property. So please take that as another environmental concern besides sustainability. Thank you. Thank you.
David.
So virtually all electric vehicle batteries are recycled today. The lithium, there's no battery acid in a lithium battery. The lithium is easily recyclable. The cathode and anode metals and there are lots of different cathode and anode chemistries. They can be complicated to extract, but they're also, right now, they're all done in one way or another, and there are startup companies that have more innovative ways of extracting the cathode and anode chemicals out of the batteries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Alyssa Nichols, School Street. I just wanted to say that I agree with Scott about a more holistic view and looking at the plants there that are invasive as part of the committee's work. And I also agree with David about questioning the need to heat the facility to 60 degrees. When the presentation was made last year, I was really surprised to hear because I thought that diesel vehicles today use block heaters, and so it's not such an issue to start them, and they don't need to be kept in a warm facility. So thinking about lowering the temperature without creating a lot of fumes that is going to be harmful to the workers who are driving them. And I don't know how this fits into geothermal versus air source heat pump, but I'm wondering if the committee has considered radiant heating, because you mentioned the concrete floor. We have part of our house is concrete slab, and we've got radiant floor. It's much more efficient. Thanks.
Thank you. I think there has been some discussion about radiant floor slab heating. I know that's part of what we've got in the new fire station. John, I think you might have addressed that as well.
Yes, true, and we've employed that type of heating in a number of our facilities. Yeah, very common.
Thank you. Well, unless there's any other, Jim.
Just some final comments, having heard all these really helpful questions and comments. So just to confirm, I think we have this, in the last capital plan, we have this sitting in as borrowing in fiscal year 25 and 26, $15 million a year. So just to sort of let people know that, you know, we're not ignoring the fact that this is incredibly expensive, and that it has to fit within a capital plan. I'm not aware of any huge grant opportunities for building DPW facilities. You know, unlike some of our other facilities, we were able to get, you know, some compensation for. I think this is going to be on us. So, you know, I'll be interested in the FinCom analysis and the staff analysis about how that, you know, how that bump of borrowing impacts the things that we want to do. Comments about electricity and batteries and solar came up. So the usual situation in contracts, like the contract that's running the solar at the transfer station, is that if the town does nothing, the owner of the solar panels is responsible for taking them away and returning the site to the previous state. So if we don't see a financial advantage to using the parts of the contract that allow us to buy the solar panels, then we can just wait and they all go away. These panels are getting better each year, but we're typically seeing a 1% degradation every year. So, you know, 20 years, it's lost 20%. It's not as financially fabulous, but it's still generating a lot of electricity. So it may make sense for us to buy it, but I don't have my thumb on either end of those scales because I think there's too many unknowns there. The other thing came up about electricity and the grid and storage. So all of our heating systems, except for those people that have wood stoves, turn off when the electricity goes off. So it's a problem we have now. The nice thing about electricity as compared to, you know, let's say natural gas, is that there are batteries. So we can actually store, we can actually build up local storage near where it's needed. That's, you know, we're not going to, you know, suddenly build a, you know, a natural gas storage facility in Acton to take care of a situation where the, you know, the natural gas doesn't flow into Acton, as has happened in other states. But electricity, on the other hand, is something that we can both generate ourselves and store ourselves. So in terms of resiliency, I think it has a lot to say for it. I think that was it. Thanks, Dean.
Thank you. Ann.
I would like to start the project sooner than you're talking about, the 25-year borrowing thing for the whole mass of it. I would like to get the tanks out of the ground right away because I'm afraid that since their warranty is nearly up, or their warranty is up, what happens with your water tank is that 3 days after your warranty is up, the thing breaks open. So we've got diesel fuel and gasoline and all sorts of other things, and we should get it out of there and get it moved as quickly as possible. So I would like that part to be on a capital plan for the upcoming, whatever the May town meeting, because it's no longer an April, May town meeting. So we can get that section, because it's right in the center of the property. If we move it over to the side, we can then do better planning, and you know, we can find out whether we can have enough room for geothermal. We can find out whether we have enough room for all the other kinds of things that we need to do. So that's something that I think I would hope the board would push forward, because I'm afraid the tanks are going to leak. And then we'd have a 21E, and then we'd really be up in trouble.
Thank you. Any other comments? All right, well, Mr. Mangiarotti, I think we'll be interested to see how this is going to fit into our budgeting process, capital planning process for the next year. I think we've been speculating our Weston Sampson about looking at moving towards a 60% design. Sure, we can have that conversation and start soliciting some costs on it so that we can start do some long-range planning.
So the capital planning process will start this late summer, early fall. Well, continue, I guess I shouldn't say start, but we're going to start working on revising the 10-year plan, and we'll plan to publish it by the end of November, I think, is the tentative time I'm looking at. So we'll certainly seek feedback from the committee and the board as we continue to work on that 10-year plan.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, Mr. Camo.
Thank you.
The good presentation. We'll be in touch.
Thank you.
Just as promised, I will ask for motion to adjourn the Department of Public Works Facility Study Committee meeting. If any of the members of the committee would care to make such a motion to adjourn. Moved and seconded. All in favor of adjourning? Say aye. Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate your attention. Next, discuss and approve charge the committee to commemorate the 250th anniversary of the commencement of the American Revolution, which is a really long title, so we've been calling it the 250 Committee. There was a draft charge that I wrote up, which has been in the packet. So just to give you a little bit of background on this, obviously this was one of the goals that the Select Board set. My thought process was that this could conceivably be a large enough event or a series of events that we really need to get planning early. So even though most of this isn't going to take place until somewhere around April of 2025, I think it's worthwhile getting a committee together. And as far as the list of the members, trying to engage all portions of the community to really make this sort of an inclusive event. But obviously the focus is on the events of April 19th, 1775. If you have any comments or questions from the board? David?
Yeah, I think this charge looks very good. The only thing that caught me as possibly missing is coordination with surrounding towns. I would like to see something added there. I think we could have a more powerful celebration potentially. I mean, I'm not prejudging what the events would be, but I think there could be a more powerful set of events if they were coordinated with other towns. It doesn't make sense for all the towns to do all the same things. Or maybe we could do a bigger thing together, or whatever. Anyway, I think we should coordinate with other towns.
Thank you. Other comments from board members? Jim?
I just thought it was really thoughtfully put together and inclusive, and at a time when looking back at our history has caused such a sense of, division and, people talking at each other. I just saw this as a really nice coming together of, different points of view and, all focused on the same period of time.
Thank you. Other comments? Imogen?
Yeah, I want to echo what people have said. To David's point, I think that including other towns could be interesting. To Jim's point, I did also think that the language was inclusive. And I think that the 9 members that you've listed as those comprising the committee do seem appropriate for what this committee would be tasked for. So I thought it looked good on my end.
Thank you.
I'll just agree with what's said. It looks good.
Thank you. I know one comment that I received was The question about the designee from the Acton Boxer Regional School, I put down Regional School Department. And the question was, do you mean a school committee member or do you mean a school staffer? And I frankly left that deliberately vague. You know, I would like this to include the schools. There's been lots of discussion about how much in the way of history is being considered in any public school system now. I think, you know, in an ideal world, I'd like to see somebody like a department chair from the social studies department. I think they could add a lot to this, but I would certainly leave that open to however the school district wants to appoint somebody. That's a little bit of the background on that. There's also some questions that have been raised about, you know, is there a lack of focus here? Should we focus more precisely on the events of the revolution? I did include the other information, the other possibilities of things we could discuss, but I think a lot of this, I wanted to make this charge broad enough so that the committee could kind of go where they would like to. I had some very exciting conversations with Maria Palacio, our new Memorial Library Director. She's kind of all in on this whole idea of starting to open up the library a lot more for author events and speaker series and that sort of thing. So it does give us a little more latitude. The other point that was raised is I put down that we would dissolve the committee on September 30th, 2025. My thought was that this would give us enough time so that if you want to include something like a reenactment or commemoration of the Battle of Bunker Hill, you could still have that within the charge of this committee. Then the question was raised, well, how about 1776? What are we going to do for that? So I would be okay with extending the duration of these committees, but I have a real fear of these zombie committees that just won't go away. So that was the date. So if anybody has any, from the board, has any suggestions to that, I would certainly entertain them. And I guess I'll open it up to any questions from the audience.
Dave Lunger, Wampanoag Drive. So the draft charge, I believe, is overly broad. It diminishes the focus of what we are commemorating. Commencing on April 19th, 2025, Acton 250 should be constituted with that date in mind, being a nationwide launch of an educational and celebratory recognition of the freedom movement leading in a lead up to independency on July 4th, 2026, whereby Acton had a central pioneering role. I have 4 points which are in order regarding the current charge. Encompassing historical periods such as the Civil War, while very much worth recognizing and teaching about and commemorating, is out of scope for this committee. The 250th anniversary of the start of the Civil War is not until the year 2111, 89 years from now. The committee should liaison, the committee should liaison with other organizations focusing on year 250 commemorations. For example, the National Parks Department, the America 250 Foundation, the President's Advisory 1776 Commission, and I agree with other people that mentioned about other towns like Concord and Lexington and Arlington, very much involved with April 19th. Number 3, there does not currently appear to be room on this committee for the public at large. The 9 members listed and the entities that they come from should be reconsidered and separated out as support and logistics from steering, and add slots for regular Acton citizens. The dissolution of the committee should be extending at least another 9 months. The commemoration is a window from April 25th through Independence Day of 2026. I hope that you see fit to take the remaining weeks of the summer to revamp and improve this committee charge. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other?
Hi, I'm Corinne Hogseth, Indian Village still. I agree with everything that Dave was said. I want to reiterate, I think it's overly broad. You're talking about the dissolution date, only going, say, 9 months. There's a reference to the Civil War in here. I don't understand why. I mean, that's, like, should we go to, Vietnam and Iraq War too? I don't know, where does it end? I think it should stay much more focused on, April 19th, 1775 to July 4th, 1776. I'm also concerned about the committee, the constitution of the committee. I would hope that the person representing the schools, if there is a person, is somebody not just from the social studies department, but a U.S. history teacher. And there's not that many of them, so it might be putting them on the spot. I hope it's not somebody from the school committee. That committee has shown themselves to be hostile to those of us who are proud of Acton's role in the start of the Revolutionary War. And again, I agree that there should be a lot more room for citizen participation in this committee, or if there's subcommittees, whatever, there should be an opportunity for anyone that wants to participate to do so. Thank you.
Thank you.
Scott Smyers, Central Street. Thanks, Dave, for your well-done comments. I agree with those. Thank you, Corinne. I agree with them as well. And I just want to follow up by saying I volunteer to be on the committee. I'm not on any of these qualifying categories, but I'm very passionate about this topic. I went to Acton Boxborough High School. I didn't play any sports, but I still am proud of the colonial history here. So please take that into consideration. And I'm glad you're doing something with this Acton 250. I think that's very important. It's a very unique part of our heritage. And I think it's, I'm hoping it doesn't turn into something that it shouldn't be. It should stay focused on celebrating those events. Thank you.
Thank you.
Amber Klauer, Piper Road. Thank you for coming up with this, and thank you, David. I think it's vitally important to stick with April 19th. I thought that's what we were celebrating. I've got two relatives buried on the monument out there that were there that day, and other cousins are married cousins back then. That's what they did. I was related to all of them. But we do have to, I think, stick with April 19th and celebrate Acton the way it should be celebrated. Thanks.
Thank you. Do we have any? Matt, I believe one person would like to make a comment online.
Yes, Nijan, you should go. Thank you. Yeah, just to echo some of the other things that people said, this has to be focused. I wish you would get rid of references to the Civil War and even aspects related to the Native Americans, because this particular event was basically a fight between the British and the colonials. And we need to keep focused on this event, which is basically the founding of the modern constitutional republic that we have. One concern I have about the number of people in the committee, let's say it's 9, is the composition of the committee. And what is very disturbing, I find, not just in Acton, but in the country as a whole, is that this committee might get hijacked by people who are fundamentally anti-American, where they see America as perpetually racist or this phobic or that phobic, and they see America in very negative terms as effectively the source of all problems. I can go on and on. And what I don't want is, I don't want somebody with thinking that the 1619 project is the real founding of America, to be on the committee that celebrates this, because they will be hostile to the very concept of the founding of this country. So, I mean, I can almost state with high certainty that no social studies teacher today in America, in this woke American social studies departments, are going to be qualified candidates in terms of their attitude towards America to be on this committee. So I'd like people who genuinely love America for its freedoms, for its founding ideals, to be on this committee, and not. I'm an immigrant who's been here for 40 years, and I perpetually feel that I love this country more than many of the people around town who wax eloquent about the racism in this country. So, thank you.
Thank you. All right. What I would propose is we've got another meeting in late August. I propose that I take this back and take into consideration some of the comments that were made and bring back a revised charge. We do have the luxury of time on this, so I would propose to bring it back. Jim.
I think it's right that we, probably having more discussion time is good. On the other hand, I want to support this effort. An alternate way of thinking about this is that we approve the charge as it is tonight, with the understanding that, like every charge, we revisit it, we reconsider it. Be nice to be able to launch this process and show our support for it as soon as possible, and then consider revisions, either in August or whenever it makes sense.
David?
Yeah, I think Jim's idea is a good one, especially with regard to the date that we dissolve the committee. I mean, we obviously have a very long time to consider that, right? If we want to extend it through July 4th or a couple months after July 4th of the following year, we can do that at any time in the next 3 years. So anyway, I think we could consider moving ahead.
Well, it's on the agenda. My preference would be for you folks to give me a little time to go through this, clarify the focus a bit, and certainly spend some time thinking about the size of the committee, and make sure that we've got enough. Usually we have a hard time finding volunteers for committees, but maybe this will be an exception to the rule. Yeah, a whole room full of them right now. So I would prefer to be able to bring this thing back in just a month, and I think I'll have it in somewhat better form. That I thank you to my fellow board members for all the support on this. It's great. I just want to make sure that we've got the support of the community as well. All right, moving along to the consent agenda. Item 7, approved meeting minutes, May 23rd, July, and July 11th, 2022. Approve executive session minutes, July 11th, 2022. Approve town manager contract. Appoint Kate Warwick, full member, Conservation Commission, term to expire June 30th, 2025. Number 11, reappoint William Klauer, full member, Cemetery Commission, term to expire June 30th, 2025. Item 12, request the use of town roads, bikes, not bombs, September 11th, 2022. Approve amended date for one-day alcoholic beverage license, District 14, Freemasons, Narrow Park Picnic Pavilion, August 14th, 2022. Approved by the board on May 9th, 2022. Approve a one-day alcoholic beverage license, Chantal Kuhn, Exchange Hall, August 20th, 2022. Accept gift Recreation Department for $100 from Thomas Lockerbie and Kathleen McCrickard, 'Kathleen' 'McCrickard' to support a dog park in Acton. Approve a one-day alcoholic beverage license, Chantal Kuhn, Exchange Hall, August 20th, 2022. Accept gift Recreation Department for $100 from Thomas Lockerbie and Kathleen McCrickard Item 16, accept gift recreation department for $100 from Ryan Dranka to support a dog park in Acton. Accept gift recreation department for $300 from Sandra Traylor to support a dog park in Acton. Approve refund request cemetery division for $2,400 for Richard Savage for the return of unused cemetery plot at Woodlawn Cemetery. And approve a one-day alcoholic beverage license sub to New England Narrow Park Picnic Pavilion 2, July 30th, 2022. I'll accept a motion to approve consent items 7 through 19 inclusive.
So moved. Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you very much. I'm looking for one more motion.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Moved and seconded to adjourn at 9 p.m. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you very much.